All right, we're back. Billy, is that you said that's Mike Powell in the background over there?
That's Mike Powell doing the famous flip.
What a
Forgot who it
leg.
was against, but I do remember the day he did it.
I think it was against UMass, and they were up by like 10 goals or something like that.
Yeah, he was like the main event when he was in college lacrosse. He was doing all the. I still think he has maybe the best highlight reel of all time on
That's,
YouTube. I was actually there's this middle schooler here in seventh grade that's a really good athlete. Yesterday, I was showing him the Mike Powell highlight reel, trying to convince him to play lacrosse in the spring.
that's what I was just gonna say. Any young player should look up the Mike Powell highlight reel. He's a musician now. He gigs around upstate New York, which is pretty interesting slash cool.
Yeah, and he's good. And I think he always was. I remember back before social media and all that, I would get Inside Lacrosse every month, and
Yep.
he was on the cover playing an acoustic guitar with his dog, and it was like the title was like Mike Powell is the biggest thing in lacrosse, but is lacrosse the most important thing to Mike Powell?
Yeah,
Remember, it's like the most epic cover ever.
I
He's the
remember
man.
that.
You met him once, didn't you meet him at
I met him at LaxCon. Yeah, just don't want to brag or anything, but Mike Powell follows me on Instagram. Um,
musician stuff?
but well, yeah, that was kind of the thing that we really hit it off on. Is obviously Casey, his brother Casey, was friends with my cousins when he was living in Southern California. So and Casey was at Beach Dogs camp that one summer.
Yeah, he's the man too. I feel like he was
Totally.
yeah, he was cool to run camp with.
Yeah, so I was talking to him, and then Mike was there doing stuff at it was they had a vendor booth for the Powell brand, and so Mike and I were talking, and we were just talking music stuff and shared the sea level stuff with him, and it was cool. I think that's one thing that I really enjoy about lacrosse. Lacrosse, there's a creative vein to it. I don't know quite how to describe it, but a guy like him, he's this legend. But the thing that we really bonded over most, obviously lacrosse is important in both of our lives, but the thing that we connected on most was the music stuff, which was really fun.
Yeah, like he the way he played lacrosse was so creative too. I mean, all of the
Totally.
Powells, I think, but he kind of took it to another level. He's one of the best ever, I think.
Yeah.
Casey Powell was like growing up, he was sort of my hero. So that was wild during Beach Dogs lacrosse camp. It's like, all right, I'm playing speed lacrosse on the same team as Casey Powell, and he's just kind of hanging out with us, but he's just really good guy.
That was maybe the greatest speed lacrosse team ever created. It was you, Casey Powell, Sean Evans, excuse
Sean
me.
Evans, fresh off MVP NLL season.
Yep, and there were a couple other guys on that team.
Tyler Hill,
Yep,
Trenna, his sister, Brett
yep,
Queener, and
Queener.
Marshall,
Yep.
I believe was the lineup. I remember I scored a goal, threw a behind the back pass to Tyler. He finished, and then I get back to the bench, and Sean Evans has his shades on. He's just like, "Who is this guy?" I was like, "All right, I guess that's a compliment from the."
Yeah, I was on the other team, so I was. You guys were kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters, and we were the sacrificial lambs. But it was all right. It was still fun.
It's on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. Just type in "speed lacrosse." Rhode Island. You got Ed Sheeran in the background playing some tunes. It's like an epic video with the drone shot and everything at St. George's School in Newport.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And those are the days. Well, big weekend this past weekend. Lacrosse season kicked off for Division One schools. I saw some MCLA schools played as well, and Stevenson schools high school season. Our first practice was Monday, so lacrosse season is in full swing. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
It's underway. Yep, they're playing, and I went to on Sunday. The main lacrosse high school coaches convention was on Sunday at Colby College. So for me, it seems official as well. I know my brother actually just told me he's heading down to Loyola next weekend, I believe, for the Loyola Hopkins game. He's getting together with his buddies. That's always a big rivalry at the beginning of the season. Those two play.
Yeah.
So yeah, the weather's gonna start coming, and lacrosse season is upon us.
Did you catch any of the games from this past weekend?
I did not watch any of them. I was listening to speeches at Colby on Sunday and surfing waves on Saturday. We got a storm finally, so
Nice.
I missed them, but I did watch some highlights. I kept up with them. I saw another one. Towson and Hopkins had a pretty tight one. Hopkins beat him by 1. That's another big kind of Baltimore rivalry. So yeah, I kept my eyes on him. I think hopefully catch a game here this week because I'm definitely interested. I like Syracuse this year. To tell you the truth, I think they've got a lot of talent that might come together. So here we are, February 5th. I might throw it out there. I think Cuse might get back on top, even though that might seem like a reach for some people. I think Spallina is going to start coming into his own. He's really been killing it American-wise indoors. He's kind of become a good, respectable American indoor box player. I saw him throw a nice pass to Trey Deer in their win the other day. And yeah, I'm just kind of excited to throw some Cuse on and see how those guys are looking this season. They haven't really been back on top in a while, so that's one of the teams I've kind of got circled that I want to catch a game. I want to catch a game here early season.
Yeah. Well, you know me. I'm a U Albany fan, so I'm always rooting for them. And I think they won the American East last year, which was pretty cool. So I think they were they've been trending back upwards, which is nice. I think it's just also fun to be a fan of a team and follow a team throughout the season, and whether they're doing well or they're not doing well. I've really enjoyed that, especially with Albany during lacrosse season, because lacrosse is my life at this point, and it's easy to be inundated with all the results and all that stuff. And following them, I think, is really fun because you just follow that arc of the season, and I've really enjoyed that. And it's just such a fun program to watch. Scott Marr's the man. They always recruit awesome players that are fun to watch. Their run and gun, up and down style of play, you just can't go wrong. And I think sometimes I just love that it's you live by the sword and you die by the sword, and sometimes I think it doesn't always work out for them, but it's almost bigger than that. Like, that's the way the game is meant to be played, so just play it.
Yeah, they're definitely a fun team to watch. I try to with the coaching side of it, I definitely try to take in Scott Marr's. He starts practice off loose. He's playing tunes a lot. He's kind of got the guys just loose and having a blast out there. So he seems like he would have been. You look at him, it's like, man, I would have loved to have played for that guy. And his teams are fun to watch too. I think I'm a Duke fan now. I met Coach Danowski in San Diego. He's got the Polish last name. I was coaching the Polish national team, and he was nice enough to have me down last year for a week. I kind of just, went to practices and sort of soaked it all in while they were prepping for Jacksonville last February. And was pretty cool to just see how those guys did things, And to me, he's just such an amazing coach. Pretty laid back, and he's just Pretty cerebral, kind of doesn't ever seem to get too high, doesn't seem to get too low. And I've always really kind of looked up to him. He was a really good attackman at Rutgers, and he's done some great things, obviously, at Duke. So I'm always pulling for Duke. They seem to start the season off usually with some weaker opponents. I think they got their first big win against it's like Bellarmine, and I think they're playing Jacksonville next. But I think they've had a few national championships where they kind of were like 500 middle of the season, and then they got rolling at the end. So it's always kind of interesting to see how those teams turn out, like with their chemistry, and usually they've got some pretty skilled attackmen, which is always fun to watch. I know back like when they won their first one, Max Quinzani, who's a Massachusetts guy from Duxbury. Yeah, he was playing that lefty spot, and Danowski's son Matt was on the team, and Ned Crotty. So they've always kind of had some real skill on offense. Last year it was Brennan O'Neill, Dyson Williams, and Zawada. Those three were pretty fun to watch. So got the eyes on Duke too. They're always a good team to keep tabs on.
Yeah, you got to respect Danowski in that he has a way of doing things and he sticks to it. Like, I'm pretty sure they don't do any fall ball scrimmages.
Right.
And like you said, in the beginning of the season, sometimes they drop these games and it's a score where it creates some buzz in the lacrosse world, but they are so consistent with that arc of the season where it's just kind of they're just constantly getting better and better, and to bet against them in May is foolish. They're just Danowski. He's got his system. It's different than other people's in some ways, but he just sticks to it, and that's something that I always respect. Whether or not I'm rooting for Duke,
Yeah, I mean, he keeps it incredibly simple. It was amazing for me, like, kind of I was paying more attention to the offense a bit, but like, Matt, his son was coaching the O, and he was kind of getting on the guys. They were at this point when I was down there, I think they were 3-0. And he was sort of ripping into like that top attack unit, being like, I know you guys, you think you're on top of the world. You've been drinking that rat poison called social media. You're leading the country in assists, but he was kind of trying to keep him level, which he can do. Matt Danowski is one of the best attackmen of this era. So he was intense, but really just dialed, and it was awesome to watch him go to work. And then, hearing the older John Danowski kind of like a few times he kind of just like got next to me and was explaining some things. And it was real simple, like a man up play where he'd be like, timing up the cut. Zach Zawada, he's one of the best feeders in the nation, so I trust his vision. If it's there, it's there. If not, we keep it moving. Backside, and he's working with like the skills of the players and giving them the freedom, and kind of keeping it simple. Really was sort of what I took from him. He's kind of big on getting a little bit up in the head with the mentality of the guys, and sort of where they've got to be, and feeling the pulse of the team. And I just thought he was one of the coolest guys ever. So go Duke. I'm a Blue Devils fan. I don't think I really was before, but after last year I can't help but root for him. So
that's awesome. That sounds like a once in a lifetime experience. You said you had a preseason coaches meeting at Colby. What were some things that people were talking about in that meeting?
Yeah, they go over the rules. Josh Bladesdell, he's the head of officiating in Maine, so that's a thing that they hit on every year. Dave Barton, who's the head coach at Falmouth, he's got a great program up there. He was a goalie at UVM. He gave a pretty cool 45-minute sort of presentation on how he teaches his goalies. I thought that I took a lot from that one. Don Glover, who coached at Brunswick for a long time, I want to say is the second all-time winningest coach in Maine high school history. He gave a little talk about how to kind of develop a culture. It's a lot of, because in Maine there's a lot of new programs, so it's cool because it's really trying to develop the game up here and coach coaches sort of deal. And Glover was saying, you've got to really get people in the community that can coach it at the youth level and all the way up and establish some traditions and some cultures. And you hear from these different voices. The Colby staff puts on a little talk, and a couple years ago it was up at Bowdoin. So they try to get some college coaches showing you some drills and some of the stuff they do. And it's good, I think, because in the state of Maine, there's a few programs that have been around for a long time that are pretty established and consistently have kids going on to play in college. But most of the state is still pretty new to the game, so it's still growing up here, and it's a cool thing to be a part of. So,
yeah, we have a lot of preseason stuff happening as we set up the youth season, and we didn't have that type of meeting where there was kind of a professional development aspect. But one thing that we've been doing at Lacrosse the Bay is really trying to make sure that we are setting up the coaches up for success, which I think has been good, like creating a coaching development program. I think the thing that I struggle with this time of year, trying to organize everything, is just making sure that everybody is getting the most out of the spring season, making sure that kids are at the right level, thinking about how many kids you have on a roster and whether those kids are going to get enough playing time. And just, and there's been a lot of back and forth between me and other programs where people have been receptive, but there is a debate, about what kind of game formats really make sense for different kids at different age groups, which has been interesting. I've been a huge proponent of the Lacrosse World Sixes format. When we were playing, and still now, 7v7 was a popular format. 2 defensemen, 2 midfielders to attack, playing short field. I remember a lot of fall ball tournaments were like that. And then obviously transitioning to the full field. But when it comes to developing players, I don't know that I have it figured out, but I just feel like the answer for a lot of this stuff is kids getting a lot of touches.
Big time.
We can do that,
Yeah, totally agree. I think, for the younger kids, you want to mix, in my opinion, the skill development, working on the drills, but a lot of kind of like just playing, because that's how they develop those skills. And the sixes, makes a lot of sense. You can get more running in, more touches in. I don't think you necessarily need the long pole for the younger group,
What age do you think it makes sense to start playing with a long pole?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're comfortable with a shorty, you can kind of pick it up. But to me, like 6th, 7th grade, I actually thought about it this morning. I met up with a kid at the high school. It's his first year playing lacrosse. He's a football player, and gave him a helmet. And I was like, "You got a stick?" He's like, "Yeah, I got a long pole." So I was like, "All right, choking up on that thing, that even the pros, they choke up on their long poles because you got to be able to handle it. And a lot of those, Canadian poles like Brody Merrill and some of the guys that were, incredible long poles grew up playing, short stick in the box. So, I think you don't really need to bring it in until, maybe sixth, seventh grade. And obviously there's no long pole in sixes, which is one of the big differences. So,
Right. Well, and it's interesting too, is just from right getting, we'll call them first generation lacrosse kids out there, right? It's like their parents didn't play, they don't know anything about the sport, so you convince a kid in a family to be like, yeah, we want to try this out, because this is the case for a lot of us in California. I mean, obviously it's new in a lot of places in Maine, but even more so here in California. But it's crazy where it's like, okay, lacrosse, you got your stick, you got your pads, all right, we're ready to go. Oh wait, actually, you need to take this long pole now, because like that's what we're playing. Because if you play full field, like the kids, you don't have a long pole on defense. I mean, it's just it doesn't make a ton of sense. So I find, and long poles are expensive too, right? So it's so interesting where I think a lot of times the cart gets put before the horse, where it's like you should really be developed in terms of playing with a short stick, and and that, like you said, once you feel good with that, then pick up a long pole. The other piece too, I think that I struggle with at like third and fourth grade is goalies. Like, I don't know that goalies make a ton of sense at the youngest age group, because I just don't think specialization makes a ton of sense. I'd be curious your thoughts, but as a goalie, it's a gnarly position. So to throw a kid in third and fourth grade, sometimes that can be like not a great experience. Like I've brought the pads to a kid and been like, all right, you're goalie today, and the kid just like starts crying, and I'm like, all right, you're not goalie today. But but I think that I think just getting kids with a stick, playing up and down, starting there, and then slowly building up, I think that's just so important. And I just see a lot of programs or a lot of leagues where they are all, they're goalies, long poles, things like that, where I guess my philosophy differs. I guess the last thing I'd say, and I'd be curious your thoughts, without a goalie, I like the format where it's kind of like more like hoops. If you have like a 3x3 net, you've got a full pop-up crease around it, and then maybe you put a shooter tutor in. I think that's like a cool way to play, and so the kids are just getting up and down and playing. The thing that, and I tried some of that last year, the only thing that doesn't totally work is, right, when the goalie's in the net, you have to kind of shoot it hard and put power on it, whereas sometimes kids were kind of doing like lobs or whatever it took to kind of get it into the net. So it didn't always work super well, but I don't know. I don't know that goalies necessarily make sense, in third and fourth grade.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could go either way. I think a healthy way to do it sometimes at that level, is you can rotate. You can have a set of goalie pads. Different kids can jump in just to get a taste of it. I think that happens a lot. And then maybe you get a kid that loves it, and he just runs with it, and that's his thing. But 100%, you can play. Without a goalie, you can throw a trash can in there. You can throw a shooter tutor in there. I mean, if they're not really shooting the ball, you can referee it and just say like, not a real shot, no goal. But
the shot sucked.
Yeah, I mean, it's with that younger age group. As long as you get them having fun and running, it'll kind of go from there. Sometimes you got a kid that he hops in the net and it's his thing and he loves it. But I think a lot of times, like, here in this town at the youth level, it's, they're kind of rotating it in.
Right.
Different kids are trying different positions, which I think is good too. You kind of, you should, when you're that old, I think in most sports, it's good to kind of try out different spots,
Totally.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one thing where I could have been an even better goalie is if I had played out more. I think I was a goalie and I started playing goalie in seventh grade, and then I kind of was just like, okay, I'm the goalie, but my clearing game really suffered, because I didn't play out as much. So even though I was a good stopper and a communicator, if I had spent more time outside of the net, I think I would have been a much better, well-rounded goalie.
Yeah, but
Um,
then Lake Tahoe 2014, you're just running the field with a long pole,
was
D
I?
to 8D. Yeah.
That's
um, I think that it happens that way with a lot of us old guys. It's like, after college, you're like, all right, I'm picking up the pole.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. What are some things? Do you guys do anything to connect your youth team and your high school program? Like, is there any continuity or like you mentioned that somebody talked about that at the Colby conference? Like, what are some things you guys do to connect the youth to the high school?
Yeah, it got me thinking, because I think I need to do a better job with it. We have the high school guys. They go Saturday mornings. I always get a group of them, and they go and they help with the youngest group in the town. So the first and second graders, and they run that, which is great. We do a camp in the summer. I get the guys on that.
Is that a
I'm think
volunteer thing that they do on Saturdays?
Volunteer on Saturday. Yep.
Yeah,
In the summer, the ones that made it, I think all week we paid them. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I get out to the youth stuff as much as I can. Um, this year, I want to try to do like something like a kind of a special game where the youth guys are involved. I think in the past we've done. We're doing it again. Actually, it's a preseason scrimmage we do with Portsmouth, which is 15 minutes down the road.
hmm
They're out of state, they're in New Hampshire, but we scrimmage them, and then we do a clinic after, which is great. So we try to build stuff in like that as much as we can. I think for me though, heading into my fourth year here, that's like one of the next steps I sort of want to take is get that a little bit more dialed in, and connect the youth with the high school even more, because I think it's healthy for lacrosse in the community, and it helps kind of spread the game and grow it, and I think it's good for the older guys too to give back. So
yeah, totally. My experience when I coached one season at Lincoln Sudbury when I was living in Boston.
Massachusetts state champ Schuyler
Massachusetts state
Horn.
champ. Yeah, I got the ring here somewhere. But one thing that has stuck with me ever since is how, and just to put some context. I mean that spring, Coach Brian Vana, he's been coaching there for years, and basically, I was coaching lacrosse in the area, goalie coaching specifically, and the situation was they needed a goalie coach because he basically said to me, "We have a state championship offense. We just need to figure out our goalie situation," and we figured it out. But I mean, from what I remember, they were dominant. And they were dominant for a couple of years after that. I mean, they were such a strong program and continued to be. They were in some of those ESPN showcases with, Brunswick and Taft or whatever. They were, and I'm sure they're still strong today. But starting with this state championship, I mean, they went on this 5-8 year run where they were just dominant. And I will always remember the connection that they had between the youth program and the high school program. And they had these two fields side by side. And I know this isn't the case for every program, but just to kind of visualize here, they had two turf fields where they would practice, they would have the high school practice, and then afterwards the youth teams would play. And then they had kind of like their game stadium kind of adjacent to those fields, but the kids were just constantly around the high school team, and then they had the kids on the sideline for, for their games, and these kids, you could see them looking up to these high school players like they were just, they were just these they were their heroes, and then you could see that fuel their fire to want to fill that space, and it was just so consistent. It was just a part of the culture. Obviously, having those fields close by and that proximity plays a big part of it. But that always just stuck with me as if you really want to get a strong program in, a geographic area or a school system, that's really the secret sauce.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I'm not sure how how Vana did it. If it was, it's probably, partly intentional from, the coach's part in setting up the structure, and then I think the other part, it sort of fuels itself. If you got a high school team that's really good and winning, you got a lot of people in the town and in the community that want to go watch it, and little kids that say, hey, like, that's going to be me someday. I'm going to go win a state championship.
Yeah, and let's be, Vana also had an incredible coaching staff. Jake Beebe, who we played against when he was at Springfield, who was a Lincoln Sudbury guy, another guy who had played at Duke. He had this awesome staff as well. But it's in something like that, you have those tangibles, right? You have these coaches who have these great resumes. You have the numbers, but then there's it's like a recipe. There's always kind of like some secret sauce, some secret ingredient. Where it's and for me, I just saw that and I was like, that is it. So,
yeah, well, Brian Vana, he's definitely a good coach. He's the enemy. He's the head coach of Team Italy. So
that's right.
he's no friend of Team Poland coming up here for the European Championships.
That's right. That's right. This is true. Well. On that note.
But pretty sweet that who did you guys beat in that state championship?
Duxbury,
who was, they're traditionally that's the team in Massachusetts.
Right, and another team that has a really strong youth program.
Yep, you drive through Duxbury, all you see is lacrosse nets.
Right, and part of it is the culture of the town. Right, they're going to prioritize. Out here, football and baseball are really big in some of these communities. So, building a lacrosse field, it might not be a priority for some people, but, you can't. And Lincoln Sudbury is one of those lacrosse towns, So, but that being said, I think that there's a lot to be there's a lot to be said for older players, giving back to younger players where they came from and the value in that.
No doubt.
All right. Well, we've got it's a good little catch up. Billy. We got lacrosse season's upon us. We're in it, and hopefully we got an interview for next week. We're teeing a couple up.
I think we got Scott Singer on deck, I believe, end of this week or start of next week. So we'll get his side of things, which will be interesting, and we'll just keep on moving here. We're February 5th, so we're rocking, we're rolling.
We're rocking, we're rolling. All right. Well, stay warm out there, enjoy the snow, and we'll be back next week.
See everybody.
Outro. God